Oda Kirk's butt.
Swell.
Good luck, you two.
I have the same mic that records my D&D
I gotta
sessions.
text this to my mom before we start.
Yeah.
I am absolutely not texting this to my mom.
Yeah, my family's really cute. They like Google Chrome, like stream it on the TV.
My family has not talked to me since.
I see us. Let me say something.
It's working?
Oh my god. I lost my G-chat.
Swell. Oh, I said swell.
A little bit
Oh
too
god,
big.
my voice sounds so disgusting. Okay, make that be away.
You can chat in the window too if you want to, make insults to each other or whatever.
Oh, I can do that too with our faces.
Hello.
So if I sit just like
You should
this, I'm
definitely
just
mute
behind
that
Emma.
because
No,
this
I'm
one
That's
AC,
perfect.
this one AC is about to start.
Hold on. Go text my mom.
Okay.
Things are important.
Oh wait, I should text Miles.
See? We should just text everyone.
Should we just post it on Facebook?
I posted in the college and the high school policy team
Oh gosh.
pages, so
Can you see how many viewers they're gonna be?
I can see. I can also tell you the average of if there's 2 people watching. Oh, only one now.
Because Alana X'd out.
Yeah, I asked that.
So it's just
Oh,
me
so we
watching
should all
that.
watch it to pretend like we're famous.
Yeah.
The last time I was live streamed, I don't even know. Is that a mosquito? Disgusting.
Okay, I'm done. I texted my We're good to go.
Okay, we're good to go. Let's start this. Do y'all have the email? With
Yes.
the one I see in it?
Yes.
Are you all prepared?
Yes.
Alright, here we go.
So prepared.
The United States federal government should ban greenhouse gas emissions from hydraulic fracturing projects. Observation 1 is solvency. Fracking by definition emits massive amounts of methane. The act makes it categorically impossible for fracking to continue. Fischetti 12. Frack wells leak 40-60% more methane than conventional wells. Volumes of methane also flow back up and release into the atmosphere. Fugitive methane can be seen in infrared videos. Methane will contribute 44% of the greenhouse gas produced by the U.S. Of that 70% will come from all natural gas observations and operations. And advantage 1 is pollution. Scenario 1 is water pollution. Fracking contaminated drinking water. Ridlington and Rumper 13. Wastewater from fracking contains pollutants. A way of dealing with this toxic waste. New Mexico substance from oil and gas pits and contaminated groundwater released 421 times of discharge into rivers and polluted drinking water after plants discharged fracking water into the Mongolia River. Local authorities issued drinking water advice for 350,000 people. Just deep disposal wells can fail. Wastewater contaminated in San Jose Pecos alluvium aquifer with 6.2 billion gallons of injection wells may cause regulators to crack, accelerating wastewater drinking water aquifers. Despite the risk, in the industry is seeking to drill new sources of drinking water for millions of people. And fracking groundwater pollution kills. Chapman 10. Many of the chemicals are known to cause death. More than 1,000 cases have been documented. Wastewater evaporates into the open air. Wastewater sources are risk from spills and tricklets. Few, if any, treatment facilities can handle radioactively contaminated water. And scenario 2 is air pollution. Fracking causes air pollution. Ridlington and Rumper 13. People who live close to fracking sites are exposed to air pollutants. Fracking operations are releasing these pollutants into the area, monitoring found out levels of VOCs. Children were barred from talking about fracking for life workers. Maybe inhaling silica dust from most 47% had levels of silica that exceeded the legal limit for workplace exposure, while 78% exceeded OSHA's recommended limits. 9% of the samples exceeded the legal limits by a factor of 10. Air pollution kills 3.3 million per year. Zelensky 15. Gases in the air responsible for 3.3 million premature deaths annually. More people die from air pollution than from malaria. Than HIV/AIDS combined. Air pollution costs 6.6 million deaths per year by 2050. Air pollution appears to be a very significant source of premature mortality in the United States, where air pollution accounts for 75,000 deaths annually. And advantage 2 is environmental justice. Fracking is racist. Best studies show a positive relationship between people of color and physical location of fracking operations and waste, mostly in poor communities. Johnson Warner Sebastian 16. 2.8 million people live in the 57 counties around the Eagle Ford Shale region. 50.1% were people of color, 49.9% were non-Hispanic white, 77% were Hispanic Latino, 18% black, 1% Native American. Estimated 385,000 people live within 5 kilometers of waste disposal well. Non-Hispanic whites, the proportion of people of color living near an injection well was 1.3 times higher than non-Hispanic whites. The proportion of residents living near a disposal well was positively associated with the proportion of people of color in areas with 80% more people of color. Percentage of residents living near a disposal well was to 18.4% in areas with 80% or more people of color, more than 2.04 times as many people at disposal wells permitted nearby than had people with areas as much with less than 20% people of color. The proportion of people of color increased so to the presence of disposal wells, and white elites directly control the placement of dangerous fracking operations. Communities of color are blocked from political advocacy against fracking, which is disproportionately harms them. Johnson Word and Sebastian 16. Location disposal laws may be driven by political capital between people of color and white communities and high and low wealth areas, marginalized communities. However, targeted because of the lack of political power and limited resources, communities of color have limited influence on land use decisions. This disproportionate burden can result in the exposure to pollutants and degradation of environmental air quality deaths. Less than right enforcement may lead to an increased risk in environmental contamination, ultimately exacerbating health disparities in these communities. Injection wells are disproportionately located near communities of color and high poverty regions, and indigenous communities are disproportionately affected by the distribution of fracking, pollution, and waste. McGill 14. Fracking is posing a danger to indigenous communities. Indigenous communities have seen increases in missing women, sex trafficking, and rapes as oil work has begun, flooding their lands. The government profits so oppress indigenous people. Jobs not going to Dakota residents. People are being there are women being raped, people being sold into sex slavery. Instances of government refusing to address the environmental justice has served the catalyst for indigenous women. The people decided this time to take back the democracy of the corporate controlled governments and the assholes of government responsible for its empty promises, representing a merger of environmental ethics and distributive racial justice. Considering the practical effects of this moral intersection is a priori. Colin Beatley and Harris 95. All individuals entitled to clean air and water, federal clean air could be a tangible expression that the public has the right to be free from exposure to air pollution. Exposure to environmental risks and hazards, environmental resources vary dramatically, often by race and class. There's little discussion that achievement of the minimum rights will vary by race, income, or neighborhood. Although the education of environmental planners will likely incorporate environmental ethics, there's a tendency to underemphasize the distributional equity. Environmental ethics tends to emphasize many obligations to future generations, the intrinsic value, moral rights, and nature. Environmental ethics continues to be essential for environmental planning. Greater efforts will need to be incorporated in environmental justice distributive justice. And fracking is an instance of slow industrial genocide. Indigenous Environmental Network, no date. The cultural heritage, land ecosystems, health, First Nation communities are being sacrificed for oil money. The slow industrial genocide, community resistance going. People have mounted sensitive challenges to tar sands expansion, wildlife losses related to toxic contamination, increased vocal resistance from impacted communities have also shattered the myth. And prima facie political equality is a D rule. Makes all ethical claims coherent is the key to distributive justice. Shatter for Shetta 6. Prima facie political equality includes distributive justice. Distributive justice is essential to requires fair distribution of risks and impacts. It refers to the morally proper appointment of fair benefits and burdens. Justice is distribution of either material goods or of non-material goods such as equal opportunities. Principles of distribution ought to require that all be treated equally in the distribution of environmental benefits and burdens. The social category includes political equality and the economic equality. Political equality provides for the basic justification of ethics and presupposition of justice, fairness, rights, and autonomy. The law of itself presupposes equality of treatment. Only a case-by-case analysis is sufficient. Prima facie political equality presumes that equality is defensible. The discriminator bears the burden of proof. And observation 2 is impact framing. Reject trier-die logic at the heart of linear predictive scenarios. So-called experts distort rational risk analysis by relying on high-magnitude impacts based on decontextualized internal link chains. Kessler 8. The focus on dramatic attack leads to marginalization of probabilities. One factor of the risk calculation approach is infinity risk management. It breaks down the logic of catastrophe, does not provide meaning of absorbing uncertainty. Framing attacks as catastrophe points to characteristic beyond rationality. Thus, the political decision makers are exempted from the responsibility to provide security as long as they try to preempt and tackle by constructing a chain of potentialities and probable events are linked and brought to the realm of the possible and even the probable. And this outweighs risk assessment is epistemologically biased towards white male elites who discount the severity of localized environmental hazards and destroying marginalized communities. Vertex 96. Risk assessment often carries narrow certainty. Respective influence the practice of Western society perpetuates discrimination, domination, exploitation, technocratic language, mass consideration, the decision to prefer white man's Q. Risk of assessment decisions should be made with moral and political considerations on the table. We must explore attitudes and identity. The risk assessors may be on advocating on attitudes about security and women risk that women and people of color do not share. White men have crafted a system of environmental protection that are biased. White men's perception may differ because women and people of color are more vulnerable. They benefit less and have less power. Communities of color face difficulty in avoiding the hazards. White men still control the political and political business institutions. Fear catastrophes. The policy makes it dramatic, less threatening hazards while accepting harmful but mundane hazards. Environmental hazards erode community and create stress that will debilitate the neighborhood. And the rhetoric of risk enables policy but leads to claim a permanent state of emergency that leads to military intervention. Taylor 10. Theories of risk focus on the social construction of such futuristic nuclear-retic globalized risk society have shifted to address the urgency of allocating remediating the manufactured harms. The reputation as unpredictable encourage audience to review it as always limited the impossibility of resolving may stimulate pragmatic strategies that reduce that discomfort and also generate stimulation of popular anxiety towards the very object of remediation efforts. And any solvency requires differential consciousness or the mobile, intersecting, and tactical approach to political change that allows coalitions and multiple sites of resistance. Anything else alone becomes authoritarian. Moya 2. Differential consciousness involves switching among the other four states of the conditions of oppression. The shape of power changes. Values lies in the ability to respond to the rapidly changing conditions. The postmodern world differential consciousness, she argues, implies a new kind of subjectivity involved under conditions of multiple oppression. Differential consciousness requires grace to recognize an alliance with others committed to egalitarian social reforms and grace, gender, and class justice. Those who remain separately committed will inevitably reproduce the oppressive ideologies and practice they oppose. Any of these ideologies destined to repeat the oppressive authoritarianism trapped inside a desire for truth. If stringing together internally steals an infinite impact, policy debate becomes a race to the bottom, paving over clashes of context and assumptions, and transforms predictions into a vacuous mush. Barubi 2K. Excuse me. An intended argument, an extended argument, an infinitesimally probable event of high consequence is assumed to present a highly consequential risk commonly associated with risk analysis linking. Evidence in which roll string serves as a common denominator shift results are collated into an extended argument. Evidence is linked to reach a conclusion in nearly infinite impact, often the less linked towards the machination of the debater making the claim rather than sources cited in the linkage. Outsiders remark debate arguments end in all-out nuclear war. Consequently, to categorize the activity as foolish. How many times have educators and debaters who strung out an intended argument to the jeers of the classmates while adding little to policy analysis arguments using medium-max reasoning remain powerful determinants of resource allocation? If the risk is defined one way, then one option to the topic most cost effective is defined another way, perhaps incorporating qualitative characteristics of other contextual burdens. One will likely get a different ordering of action solutions and probability assessment are eliminated as political acts, and all political acts need to be scrutinized with a critical lens. 40 seconds. Anything else?
Okay.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
What?
I don't know if I.
Yeah, we're fine. Let's just cross this.
Okay, cool. You good? Sweet. So, when the industry enacts zero emissions technology for shell extraction, your plan can't enforce a ban.
There is no such thing as zero emissions.
Okay, right now, they're releasing fracking and methane now. What happens when they develop technology? That means they don't have to release methane anymore.
They will not. It is literally physically impossible for them to frack without
Cool.
emitting.
Next question then. What happens after the plan in terms of energy?
Well, we
What
would
are
argue
yours?
that fracking is a key internal link to renewables.
Renewables.
Yeah, it's
Like
like
what?
a stepping stone, right? So, like, once we get rid of fracking, there will be a transition to renewables.
What renewables?
Air, solar,
Okay.
hydro.
Sure, that's actually fine. What are the GHGs released by fracking besides methane?
Mostly methane. They also tend to release a lot of benzene and sometimes CO2, but mostly methane.
What piece of evidence in the 1AC do you have that says that they release anything besides methane? And are those the only things that you defend are greenhouse gases?
No, we will defend every single greenhouse gas that is possibly emitted by fracking. We cap it at 0. We only read evidence that speaks to methane, though.
Alright, cool. Your Zelensky evidence tagged with air pollution kills 3.3 million per year in the context of global emissions caused from residential heating and cooking. How does the app solve that?
The app doesn't solve all of emissions deaths in the entire world, but we would argue that it's important to, like, decrease the amount of
Okay.
emissions deaths that happen in the U.S. For example, Zelensky says there are 55,000 deaths annually in the U.S.
Yeah, that's about heating and cooking. I'll move on though. Your Johnson, Widener, and Sebastian evidence says that communities of color are locked out of political power right now. How does the AF change that fundamental kind of problem with the political system?
Well, actually, there are movements in the status quo that are unlocking these systems of power, and the unique thing about our app is that it changes the way that land is used. That same piece of evidence
Why
talks
hasn't the
about
AF happen
permits.
if there are movements right now that are unlocking that system of power?
Because the last fundamental, like, physical, pragmatic step is the app.
So fracking is the only reason left that communities of color are locked out of political advocacy.
No, that is not true. We will not defend that we solve all of racism forever.
Okay, so the AF does not in any way alter the fundamental structure that means that communities of color are locked out of being able to advocate for things politically.
The things that they're locked out of being able to advocate for politically is the way that their land is used in terms of fracking.
Okay.
We fundamentally changed that.
Last question, your Schrader Fret 6 evidence about political equality says we should have equal opportunity in an economic sense. Why is that good?
What do you mean? Like,
Why is it good that we should have an equal opportunity to live the American dream? Why do you think that's a good world to live in?
I don't think that Schrader is talking about the American dream. I think that Schrader is talking about justice.
Then
in,
what does
like,
it mean to have
the-
equal opportunity in a economic sense?
No, that isn't. She says that there should be a political sense and an economic sense in terms of distribution of resources, right? So, like, the way that wealth is unequally distributed.
It's too often case.
Anywhere specific on case or just slow it down?
The advantage part.
There's two advantages, but
Well,
just put it down.
the first. Okay. I've been overruled. Probably for the best. All right.
Wait, I didn't. Did you email it?
Yeah.
I got it.
Am I?
Yep, I got it too.
How come I? What the heck?
We sent it to quintdebate@gmail.com. You're definitely in there. Are you connected to the internet, my dude?
Yeah. What? Oh, it just some loading. Loading. Hold on.
Technology.
Okay.
Worded again.
Okay.
Alright, so you good?
Mhm.
Great.
First off is resiliency. We've entered the era of resilience where toxic air bears down on those who can't take flight, and those people are then expected to survive or bounce back. The affirmative's demand for an end to atmospheric terrorism and toxic air pollution are only another cog in the machine of resiliency meant to force populations to adapt to neoliberal devastation rather than refuse the existence of neoliberalism itself. Evans and Reed 14. We are now in a new and distinctly different political era defined by the emergence of a different kind of liberalism as a belief in the possibility of security gives way to a belief in the positive danger. New technologies for rule and subjectification are appealing. Our aim is to politicize this ship by interrogating simplification for political subjectivity. What kind of subjects do demands for resilience produce? Our resilience aimed explicitly encouraging subjects to live by maxims which are insecure by design. Liberalism is aimed today at not solving preventive danger but making us forego the possibility of security through the embrace of the necessity of our exposure to danger. As a human, natural moral spiritual life, they are consolidating framework the ethical sensibilities and modes of governance are critically sought. Never before we assume the role of the principal architect. This gives the impetus to a responsibility, vulnerability, the safety, future survivability of the human species on the success, failure of its political strategies. Becoming resilient requires more than simply taking care of our individual precarious. This is a planetary obligation. Nature becomes a socio-historical category where there are a number of ways to reduce vulnerabilities, including reduce exposure, proper transparency, resilience is key to ethical responsibility, defines the ability of the system to absorb the effects of a hazard events was truly stand face the blending terms resilience and resistance, shifting emphasis on developing resistance and increasing the resilience and effective communities. Resistance is not a political claim that demands any form of firm thinking. It is purely reactionary impulse premised upon the survivability of the instinct that demands the nature of the political art to be settled. The human is the form reduced to the very level of now their life more bare living premised upon life's willful exposure to that which makes us vulnerable. The conflation of resistance and resilience signals the absence of any self-confidence. The liberal subject's disposition towards the world. Liberal societies are instead besieged by their own narcissistic impulses, which having failed to realize the limits of the rule have led them to a willful abandonment of their foundational truth claims. And the social and ecological dimensions of renewables come first. Their futurist techno-optimism as a Trojan horse sustaining the systems of perpetual violence engendered by modern energy burn and Tolian 6. Environmental problems can be traced to modern energy. Electric light remains for the privileged energy modernization is exacerbated social inequality. Its architect's promise would be contemporary energy is noteworthy for its historical constituency with a narrative of water from steam power through electricity without the same public examination of social ecological supporters. Derail present tense value which social ecological performance and forecast bountiful future proponents. They just we have cake and eat promoting energy protection system with understood ideology quantification while banishing environmental threats and technologies will be appropriate as social forces that predate them. Earlier running an anti-war politics appears to be superseded by the beliefs the economy can serve sustainability. The market wins green enthusiasts appear willing to set win making whatever the consumption of what not by whom for what and the production are not issues. Enthusiasts appear to be in trouble by larger turbines, necessity of exotic materials, and the advancing of complications. Criticisms surface about PV's capture of the state to mollify the poor. The related challenges read questions about multinational corporate solar shares, the aspiration to reorder energy without changing society, and their transition to green capitalism intensifies the suffering of the working class. Austerity, increasing commodity prices, falling standards of living, and the wage freezes. Often in 12, green capitalism system class exploitation will see to impose cost restructuring onto the proletariat, even if it manages to stop itself from destroying the plan, which the cost of transition will be passed on to us most likely as consumers. The rising cost of costing widespread, which frees falling standards of living, and the creation of green jobs to take place in the context of green capitalism. Already seeing sector within the global capitalist economy, renewable energy is already a big business and expanding rapidly. Whether there's also a practical possibility seems unlikely to be resolved fast enough to reverse serious global warming. 4 degrees Celsius or more capitalist solution climate change will displace ecological crisis into a social one. Whether through adequate and inadequate adaptation measures leading to population displacement through green austerity, we can imagine an army of unpaid workforce labor installing insulation in every home being a far easier sell than forced labor for Tesco. And doctrine of sustainable development is appropriated by neoliberalism. Evans and Reed 14. To be resilient, the subject must disavow any belief in the possibility to secure itself, instead accepting and understanding itself of life as a permanent process of continual adaptation via the embrace of neoliberalism and the attendant demands to thrive in times of radical uncertainties. And the paradigm shift from development to the sustainable development is of fundamental importance to the growth of resilience discourse and neoliberal strategies for depoliticization of the human discourse. Our resilience has been articulated through the emergence of the doctrine of sustainable development. While sustainable development deploys ecological reason to argue that there's need to secure life, the biosphere, neoliberalism prescribes the economy as a very means of security. This is a paradoxical function which neoliberalism constructs as appropriate to sustainable development. Neoliberalism is able to appropriate the doctrine of sustainable development like claims to the resilience of specifically neoliberal institution, system, governance, conditions, subjectivity, resilience is becoming the 21st century development, security, environment next to the contemporary liberal governance. Resisting neoliberalism present requires rejecting the seductive claims to alternative futures offer seemingly contrary doctrines of sustainable development. Their political promise of resilience and the fortification of resilient subjectivity results in an unbound nihilism that vacates meaning of life and filters through politics through resentment. Evans and Reed 14. Nihilism was the recurring mode of history, the operation of power leads to a will to nothingness as it strips life any player purposeful meaning that the subject is actively participating in custom of political annihilation. Self-turn is the notion of resentment. The only way it can become free is to give over to the prevailing waves of mastery said, and place nihilism has never been alien to liberal politics, arguably the most potent expression. With life faded to live biologically endowed, ceases to strip of its capacity of meaningful existence beyond the limits of bodily formation of all political strategy operated by governing through problems of finitude. The idea of death remains incommensurable to the liberal subject. The resilient subject presents the world for it is radically engendering resilient subject initially mobilized by the prospect of coming catastrophe feels the transformation of the subject system fears the transformation of the ecosystem gives sustenance to life. Transformation finds enough reasonably the irreducible spirit of the world is away from different central and centered relationship to a natural force that nothing to fail is in the accepts the inevitability of human extinction even though it is inevitable, and their fear of what the earth may become demonstrates their investment in garden culture, justifies the maintenance of liberal fascism and state racism out of appeals to rationality and necessity. Evans agreed. 14. What do we fear the earth may become? The state racism operating with the appeared all too ecological to even regarding states and related questions appear to tendencies for the population to be useful plans to be encouraging it to be removed from rooted out broader cultures, the garden culture, veritable ecology of manipulation, sign itself to the mission. The perfect human conditions, worldly gardeners who link political ecological reasoning appear frighteningly rational as they appeal to base level desires. What becomes of this when the worldly vision for science is no longer more perfectibility but simply conserve what exists in liberal fashion operates in temporary purgatory that renders all life bare within the lab of political circulation. The perception of the biosphere, some continually unified hold not only politically lost over the purpose of moral absolutes and prophetic vision disguised scientific validation. The complex nature of biospherical systems lends itself to familial subject oriented retreat so that the only politics possible is that which exists within the liberal framing of a problem. Is clear that how we might fear transformation, how we imagine a better world once rapidly claim beyond extinction all that remains as to further disbelieve in ourselves while suffocating naturalism. Biospherical transformation out of some shallow ethical claim of necessity, and the alternative is to reject the affirmative in favor of an ecological communism that activates latent and repressed rhizomatic tendencies eminent to the capitalist system. Zaltana. And 15. It is not that establishes in psyches are shut off from the rest of the earth. The immense plasticity of the alloplastic stratum means that it participates never before in the other which world has benefited from global racial divisional labor burning through fossil fuels consisting to insist on neo-axiom printing and apocalyptic anthropocene requires a new man quest for always logic, ecological equilibrium local or the other cliche. This train is traditionally called communism. The massage globally integrated system which everyone works in order to consume machine and slave and self-surveillance are automatically secured and everyone conforms to mediocrity of globally enforced the standard of human being. Communism brings freedom. Communism nothing more than called life rapey and circumventing capitalism, capital and state apparatus, not land some kind of anarchist aestheticism but commences from effectively acknowledging the plundering strategies analysis directly revolutionary terrestrial habits are evilly overturned. The capitalist biopowers exceedingly adaptive revolution becomes not spontaneous or terrorist but they're seized through machines of struggle. Next off is the grammar of decisions is made.
Just get back, go to case.
Okay.
It's fine.
The AF brackets out voices of community activists. Their top-down regulatory strategy cannot possibly respond to a huge web of structural violence with a one-shot policy. This internal interns are Moya evidence, and they just cause a reversion back to Colby Turnsey affirmed because it replicates the same kind of violence of pollution and destruction. Environmental justice occurs in zones of legal impunity. Vote negative to endorse an environmental justice research agenda that views the state as an adversary. Toledo and 16. The state itself is deeply invested on solving environmental racism, which is too costly to disrupt to the industry and states develop an issue which goes through the motion performs regulatory activity without meaningful change of problems front. They lack or skill with a political well, it must be true the racial caps environmental legislation seen as a fundamental life evaluation professional society appeals to opportunity of alliteration with impunity legal impunity explains the state refuses to implement issues maintained which should happen and not have to address environmental justice because there are many offending sanctions bureaucracy to avoid the air reducer by non-enforcement law. We need to change how we view the state. Too often the state is seen as neutral even when people lose faith in states they still turn to because zero apparent alternative. The EJ has become to implicate the state what is needed to see and the state is an adversary that must be confronted. Environmental racism will not be solved by research and the reform framework established by the EPA. We should expose the fundamental nature of state how such a co-op to EJ communities and support racial capitalism willingness for to per state coexist communities. Together we can generate new strategies to rebuild a movement that truly works towards environmental justice and fracking is poised to move abroad. Navarro and Bessie 15. Hydraulic fracturing is expanding rapidly. Latin American reserves already been mapped out. Bolivia, Colombia, Venezuela, Paraguay, Uruguay, Chile, Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico. Extracting conventional oil is much more costly, and the U.S. all the richest area. The largest have already been found. In fact, there aren't any more left. They're advancing rapidly to extract more unconventional wells in other countries, and they just cause and then the restriction on DHA just causes a carbon leakage. Wiener and 7. Subregulatory regulatory coverage fails to control important sources of pollutants and forms cost to allow for larger trading market incumbents for more countries, except for the cross-border leakage of emissions. Some global coverage encourages activities to shift or lead to unregulated area leakers, result from plies effect slack off effect and a relocation effect in the short term without any relocation of industry. Mark that card at industry and
Don't read that next one.
don't read this one.
Unless you think we need to.
Okay.
That's fine.
Fracking industry has already developed technology to reduce emission consumption. Hours 11 can methane emissions be reduced. Industry reports 99% venting reduction methane emissions and theory can be reduced by up to 90%. Industry has shown little interest in making the investment scene. Regulation can help push forward the industry in this. Towards the AFCA, 14 regulations require that all the use in oil and gas that methane emissions can be reduced by 40% by 2018. Other improvements can reduce methane emissions, replacing conventional pneumatic controllers. Methane links to be reduced at a relatively little expense, often by simply tightening bolts, replacing world seals. A number of green fracking technologies are already being implemented. That's the end of the card, so I'll stop there.
That was the Haworth card?
No, it was Kiger. I got the Kiger. We'll talk about it during prep. Don't even trip, dog. Crossix?
Yeah.
What does your K do for indigenous people?
what does the app do for people? We've made a framework claim about the creation of resilient subjectivity. Our argument
Right,
is
like
that
your alternative seems to advocate
not why, like,
ecological
say that different futures are
communism.
possible.
It says ecological communism. Is that not an example of future?
When the 2AC characterizes this as the cap K rather than the resiliency K, is when you're going to lose the debate. Our argument is not one of we should imagine having the revolution be possible. Our argument is about the kinds of subjectivities we choose to embody. So our argument is that we should move away from narratives of resiliency and progress and instead embrace the reality that there is no progress, there is no solution within capitalism.
But then what is
neoliberalism.
the ecological communism? Like, is that not a solution? Does the alt solve anything?
So our argument is that ecological communism is about positioning ourselves as individuals within a structure of neoliberalism in an ethical way. Our argument is that ecological communism is
All right,
a
what
way-
is that ethics? Tell me how goods are distributed
So-
in that ethics.
I mean, what do you mean by that question?
Like, in ecological communism, how are resources distributed?
I mean, the premise of communism would be that everybody should have equal resources.
All right, is that important?
Access to resources, but our argument is that it should not be about the endpoint of the alternative, but about the ethics and the way that we position ourselves within neoliberal systems of violence.
Right, we've indicted the way that you've conceptualized solvency, as in we say a thing and then we imagine that that thing happens. Our alternative asks us to interpret subjectivity differently, to assume
Okay.
more the ethics and kind of modes of being. that
So
are implied
the
by these
difference
different
here
logics.
is that your subject is an ethical one, or do you reject the idea of a subject altogether?
That's a weird question. We've made a couple of specific impact claims. One was about ressentiment.
Right, I want to know, like, what your conception of the subject is. Is it a liberal subject? Is it, like...
Our argument is that right now, subjects are taught to affirm values that are consistent with neoliberalism. We've read a
Oh,
few
you
links.
just
I
are
can
like,
talk
let's
about those.
affirm some different values.
We think we should deterritorialize all those values, get rid of them. We don't have new values to affirm necessarily, just that we need to get rid of all of those.
So
old
ecological
values.
communism is not a new value.
I don't think that is a necessary thing for us to win the alternative.
Okay, that's fine. Tell me about this Howarth card. If there's been technology to reduce emissions since 2011, why have they not implemented it?
Well, yeah. I mean, to be fair, your app creates an incentive even if they haven't used it already.
Actually, there are incentives in the status quo that indicate that they would, like, get massive tax breaks if they just emitted less methane. Why are they not doing it?
So, again, they're not forced to.
The costs of implementing that technology massively outweigh the tax breaks that
Does
they would
your
get for
card
that
make that
technology.
comparative claim?
Sure.
Nice try, Ricky. That's the end of cross-sex.
Prep.
Yeah, we have done.
Yep.
Alright, this is not too hard. It's a cupcake with like a subject.
So, can
It's just a
can I
cupcake.
just read the
Ooh,
cupcake
Brad.
one?
Okay, that's fine. Make sense?
Yeah.
Alright, let's talk about this carbon leakage stuff.
The what?
Carbon leakage. No carbon. Okay, that's fine. Let's stop this then. The carbon crisis. Yes. This is so. Don't even try. Just read the cards from.
Isn't it like the top right here? I don't know what you do for class.
Here's all the questions
Yes,
in one
read
case.
that, yes.
Oh, okay.
Because case comes first, and then you can cross-apply it on the other. Right? No, don't read all of them. It's too many. Read like one.
Which?
The best one. No, we're doing that one.
Okay.
And do the one with it as well. We need to work on it for timing.
Okay, but can we just be done?
What?
Can we just be done?
No, I gotta try to look up.
Good.
Yeah, sure. 5 minutes left.
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna send evidence. Yeah.
I don't know where she did this.
So many cards. Okay. To AC round 3. This is round 3.
That is correct.
Okay. Touch. Mm-hmm. Consent. Okay, you should have. If everything works, you should get it.
Got it.
God.
All right. We have this handgun.
Gotcha.
It will go case critique for the order.
Was it in the Dropbox?
Yes. But it's in my folder in the Dropbox. It's where it's saved.
That's fine.
Do you see it?
The one that's labeled 2 AC
Round 2. Yeah. I don't know. This is our round 2, so.
Which we had to buy.
Okay.
Alright, let's party.
I'll have to determine because that happened last round. Okay. Hello, viewers. This is a good time.
I'd like to thank my mom and the academy.
Okay. Okay, now we're all good. The app brings gas emissions from fracking, limiting their ability to exist as Fischetti 12. Our advantages are first is water pollution contaminates billions of gallons of drinking water and toxic wastes are Ridlington Rumpa 13, which harms brain cells and kills people, causes kidney problems and disease. The Chapman Town also air pollution, where Ridley causes silica dust. Air pollution kills 3.3 million people per year and is predicted for 6.6 million by 2050. Also, fracking is racist. We suppose those contrary to poor communities of color widely control the placement of dangerous fracking operations in community of colors are blocked from political advocacy against fracking. They lack political power to influence allocation decisions, and indigenous communities are disproportionately affected by their sex trafficking and missing women, which is our McGill evidence, and the AF is the only way to hold government responsible for their empty promises through practical policy means and practice in instance of slow genocide for indigenous communities, which is from indigenous environmental network evidence. And finally, the prevention of fascist political quality is a deal, meaning that all ethical claims in order for them to be coherent are distributed justice. And you can extend all our impact frame and contention that they have like this linear predictive stars about about coal.
Go in order. Start with the coal thing.
About coal. Yes, this is relevant to coal. They were this whole China impact scenario, how we're going to be shifting to coal, or how we're going to be shifting over, blah, blah. All of this just links really hard into our impact framing scenario, how we use distorted risk analysis, which is our Kessler 8 evidence, in order for political decision makers who are rewarded to try to take actions that preemptively respond to problems that don't exist, and epistemic bias, which is our Vercheck evidence, explain that decisions are biased by the way the white males and perceivers. All these indicative impact scenarios are only used so that we can avoid doing things like the AF, which is trying to protect indigenous communities, which might be bad for the big government fracking companies that are making millions of dollars, but really, really, really bad for poor people who can't have any input for decisions.
Don't forget the community activists.
Yeah, now on the line by line. It's time for that. Okay. First is community advocacy. We are community advocacy. Literally, when I see site-specific examples of movements that have been done by indigenous communities for community advocacy, this literally is the worst argument to make against our AF, because that is already as second as coal. There were no evidence for the city of coal shift. Also, we'll have arguments about why we would not shift to coal to do so. You need to read evidence. You're gonna make the argument. Next is the Polito argument. Stay-focused vision for solution avoids green capitalism. Dawson 10. Down one path lies green capitalism, down the other path lies justice, led away from the contradictions of green capitalism towards social justice. Core tenets include sustainable energy to 60%, greenhouse gas emission reductions as goals might appear utopian, but after years of rejecting meta-narrative progressive needed comprehensive, positive vision, while careful strategic thought, the movement is characterized by loose coalition rather than one by central organizational base. And
this is unique to community building organizing.
Yes, this is unique to community building organizing, because the only way to avoid green capitalism have a unique vision that is focused through the state that starts with grassroots and community building organizations. This is an awesome response to their argument. Then, on to Zelensky, commodify by suffering. This is not a reason to reject that. This is at least an argument to reject the argument, at least not reject the team. We only use it to frame that pollution is a really big impact in the world that kills a lot of people, and that's a reason why we should care about pollution. They're going to say well, people coughing doesn't matter. We're going to say that pollution overall does lead to people dying. So we're not using them for the bad. We're just able to contextualize our argument. Then they read go to the move abroad, but less the argument, and the carbon leakage. First is cross-apply all the prediction stuff here, how everything I made about, but second of all, so the cost to shift to other countries is higher than the cost of switching to renewables. This is why they have not, historically they haven't done in the past, and they're hauled with evidence from a pro-fracking hack. This has not been implemented in this article. They say they have any kind of new technology, but the reason why it has not been implemented is because A, it doesn't exist, and B, it's going to be too expensive, and third is that there is no comparative claim, remember, cross-examination between this new technology and whatnot. So anything else on the case?
Yes. Make a claim about why the cost to shift to other countries is higher, and why we create an incentive to shift to renewables.
Okay. So the Africa created an incentive to shift to renewable because first of all, with local indigenous communities, it's that is what has historically been the most easy for them to shift to, because it's very easy to build and to maintain, and especially on their lifestyle. But also
that technology is more ready than the no emissions.
Technology, and to move it abroad is going to take a lot of money, because you also have to build an entirely separate infrastructure that would be created in the other countries, which would be incredibly costly, and start from scratch creating a new infrastructure system. So can we go to the critique now?
Yes, sure.
Okay, critique. First is that the AF outweighs liberal. This is why you're going to be voting for at the end of the day, that the AF has so many more impacts, as we care about real people and their tangible impacts to their lives, and they try to talk about this subject thing, and this is, you can already drop them because this is a case turn, because they link to our prediction scenario with the critique, because they're trying to avoid real world impacts that people are feeling in the name of this high theory BS that doesn't actually lead to people's lives being changed. And let's go. So the AF is clearly going to be outweighing, and the AF protects the right to a livable environment for both current and future generations through the mitigation of water and air pollution. Also, the AF will solve for environmental racism, and research and efficacy like the F is key for environmental justice. Finley, Birkenholm,
No,
16.
don't read that card. Say why their conception of the subject is always already us.
Okay, that's true. So I guess we can go to the alt debate. Is that the fact that that this let us weigh our impacts against the against this critique, and that their alternative of the critique is already us, because they're trying to talk about eco-communism, which is to position ourselves in that ethical way. Specifically, what they're trying to say is that the cross-examination was damning because they say that they want the subject with new ethical horizons, but those new ethical horizons are literally the 1AC, that is the prima facie ethics that we talked about in the 1AC, which explains how we need to have an equal distribution of resources. That is literally what their alternative is eco-communism. That already is the app. Where's the critique is plain plus, which means that you would still vote off of
all of the things that they're criticizing about green capitalism, we solve.
Yes. Okay. So yes, we can talk about that probably more specifically. Okay. So links. I guess we'll start on the links.
Okay, you should start with the role of the ballot, though.
Okay, here we go. Roll the ballot. Debate is about comparing political strategies. The role of ballot is to affirm the strategy that provides the best vision for political change and the process for adjusting harm to status quo. Second is no link. We're already a criticism of capital way that labor and land is distributed, which is our moral evidence, and the differential consciousness is necessary to resolve problems, meaning that if we only do the critique alone, there's going to be authoritarianism, but justifies during a perm do both, which is where we ban all greenhouse gas emissions from fracking, but we also involved in creating an eco-communism, which also means that there is an authoritarianism distant to the up because they have a totalizing vision that excludes tactical, mobile, and intersecting form resistance. Their alt doesn't do people in the status quo who are dying from fracking, and their alt cannot solve the app. They can never solve almost. Their alt can never solve the ethic, can never solve for the racism. Their alternative cannot also solve for the pollution done by air pollution and water pollution, which is all net benefits to the perm, which also is more reasons about why our case clearly outweighs, and also is double blind after the alt rejects all form of environmental engagement, leaves environmental degradation unanswered and racism, or there's room for good forms of environmental engagement in the app, and the permutation solves. So
you have to say perm do both.
So I guess I didn't say that. Okay, perm do both. I said we'll both. I did say that, but perm do both. We're going to do the app, and we're going to engage in an eco-communism. What that looks like, it is literally the app, because their prima facie ethic is a way saying that we should equally distribute those environmental resources. And the turn outweighs the link. We want to create a more livable environment, and distributive justice is superior to any movement that their alt could create. Our link turns are more battle tested than the alt, which demands by these indigenous movement and force EPA to make legislative changes to emissions in the past. Also meaning that they have absolutely no link to with the communities or those movements. And yeah, we could do case outweighs. Okay, case outweighs commenting.
Oh no, sorry, do the link debate first.
Okay, link debate. So first of all, just please have a very high threshold for their links, because all their links are literally one question that Brand answered in cross-examination about renewable shifts. Like, that is literally their Brand evidence and their arguments on green capitalism. But the problem is that this is not a reason why the 1AC is bad, and they're not even winning claims that there is going to be a renewable shift to do so. So you have to be very aware on their link debates, because the 1AC literally says that we should engage in our ethic of the app, which is to distribute the environmental
the bottom of their Offenben green cap evidence concludes the same way that Dawson does.
It's true. Literally, so basically they might as well have just read our AC back to us and called it capitalism, because all the here, let's go specifically to what the app solves. What the app
hold on, you have to say that though. The bottom of the Offenben article concludes that state focus is good.
The bottom of their Offenben 12 article concludes exactly what Dawson said, that the only way to avoid green capitalism is by an equal distribution of justice in terms of resources. And so let's go really quick on the first link of resiliency. With their Evans and Reed argument, that is not the app. We're not saying that people have to be resilient towards the kinds of consequences that happens in the world. We're trying to say that it is not okay for them to suffer, which is why they have to make demands of this. Remember, that is the discourse already coming from the 1AC, which is that we have to demand the state that hold accountable for their empty promises in order to do so. So that the link doesn't allow for us. The next link is about renewable energy, which is not us, because we're talking about...
we're not techno-optimism.
We are literally we're not techno-optimism. The app is a redistribution of land permits and also banning fracking on those emissions. And then Offenben is literally the same as Dawson. It concludes for us. Let's see what else. The impacts, the impact is ressentiment. Okay, at the end of the day, if you're weighing ressentiment versus literally people dying, there's no quantification of that kind of ressentiment. This is there's no so ressentiment is not going to be outweighing.
We don't try to build a sustainable world.
Yeah, we're not trying to build a sustainable
the suffering
world.
And the status quo.
Rejecting the app is rejecting the K, because we already are the K. There Sahaldana evidence flows for the app. And then finally, the alt can't solve anything of the app, so once again, the alt doesn't solve alone. Authoritarian. Okay.
Alright, so tell me more about how we shouldn't consider problems that don't exist yet.
So, I don't understand what your question's asking.
You make this argument on case that our shift dissad engages in a bad model of prediction making, where we focus on problems that don't exist yet.
Yeah.
We should focus on problems that do exist now.
Alright, so say
the federal government is deciding whether or not to put a naval base in a black community, they should ignore the pollution that might cause because it doesn't exist yet? Question mark?
No. Okay, no logical fallacies allowed. What we are trying to say is that instead of trying to focus on all of these hypothetical solutions that involve large linked scenarios, that we should look at the impacts about what are happening right
why isn't the plan
now.
a hypothetical solution?
No. It's about predictions.
Yeah.
Like,
Why isn't your solvency prediction a
Because our
hypothetical
solvency-
Why
solution?
isn't the 2AC
Our
blanket
solvency-
statement claims that you will for sure shift to renewables? That
Our solvency says right now there's bad things happening in the status quo with fracking. If
Okay.
we stop that fracking, then those bad things will happen. So there's no
So
prediction.
why is that an okay prediction though? That a
It's
ban
not a
on
prediction.
fracking, that a ban on fracking means that renewable technology will happen. Corporations won't find any workaround. But a prediction like carbon sinks will be loaded into the global south is too unreasonable, too way out there for us to talk about.
I think the differentiation comes from our Berube evidence and also from the piece of evidence, like 2 pieces above that I don't remember the name of, that says that when we string together a lot of internal link chains, then that creates a bad type of internal, like...
I think we're good. I have another question.
Cosmology.
What does the AF do if communities vote to have not renewable energy because it's cheaper?
Yeah, so first of all, the 1AC, what we do is we ban greenhouse gas emission from fracking. I would rather have the discussion about what the AF said than rather than one cross-ex question about Bren. That's just a personal thing because we wrote the AF and we care about it, so I actually think it's important. But then if you still want to answer the question about communities voting, if we're talking about what communities want, communities don't want fracking, that's all the evidence that we read in the 1AC is that communities do not want fracking on there. That's why they've been protesting. Like there was one in Sacramento, California just a few years ago.
Just one more question then. Is there a shift to coal or is there a shift to renewables?
Well, that's the thing is that we don't make a claim about what we shift to. We just say we should ban greenhouse gas emissions from fracking. If you read evidence explaining why, then we will recounter evidence. But so far...
So I can just ignore this 2AC claim that says there will be a shift to renewables because that's more profitable. That goes away. Don't have to worry about that for the 1NR.
Do you want to answer this question?
Well, I would prefer to talk about what the AF does, not about...
Okay, yes, there will be a shift to renewables.
Interesting. Thank you.
You have 20 seconds of cross-ex left. You want it?
Oh, mine says like 10.
Okay.
Prep?
Okay. Are we okay, Ricky?
Yeah.
We're okay.
So no prep?
No prep.
Okay.
I might have. Yeah, I did.
It'll be resilience. Okay. Are we all good?
Oh, you said something.
There's no cards.
Okay.
Is there an overview?
Yes. Cool.
We have entered the era of resilience. Liberalism is no longer organized around security and protection, but around being resilient to the inevitable interior violence of neoliberalism, such as climate change and structural inequality. Resilience encourages subjects to live by maxims that are insecure by design, where we forego the possibility of security in favor of reactionary impulses premised on survivalism, which forecloses the emergence of alternate political systems and reduces humanity to the barest levels of meaning. That's our Evans and Reed Evans from the 1NC. Now we have 3 impacts. First, the resentment, the affirmative quest for life, reduces the act of living to only a biological question of life or death, where we strive to master the world through quick fixes that teach us to hate the prospect of our own vulnerability. We come to nihilistically accept the world's current political coordinates in favor of a mere survivalism which evacuates meaning to life. That's our Evans and Reed Evans for the 1NC. Now, second is liberal fascism. The gardening state rearranges the topiaries of liberal governance to conveniently obscure the mass graves of people of color, which are the inevitable result of neoliberal institutions in crisis. This allows governance to continue on unobstructed, which results in the mass death of whichever population happens to get the short end of the stick the next time around. That's our Evans and Reed Evans. Now,
now third is an internal link turns the affirmative. The relationship between investors and government decision makers means more coal plants just open up and fracking place or renewables take advantage of population. This fracking technology gets sent overseas. That's our Evans and Reed Evans from the 1NC. Now, you should be skeptical of their claims to help real people in comparison to the alternative. Evaluate the 1AC in terms of its knowledge production. Use your ballots to disrupt the knowledge production of their research communication trajectory. They should not get to weigh the plan. Weighing the plan is a false middle ground on a rigged game board. Fiat creates false realities where we imagine that governmental change is a linear one-to-one process where demand creates outcomes which rigs our political imaginary in favor of complacency. Our framework guarantees predictable clash because we are limited to contesting 1AC choices. 2 decades of critiques prove that furnace can adapt. Now our framework is theoretically superior, is predictable, and real-world judges are educators, not policymakers. You don't have the ability to put the plan into effect, but you do have the ability to criticize their framing of the world. Now plan focus is bad, it's unpredictable, and kills critical thinking. Reduce aim and advocacy to a 4-second sentence and trains irresponsible students who don't defend their assumptions in the process by which they formulate problems or solutions. Now this is also no escape philosophy. In this space we only have access to our immediate relationship through decision trees in politics, and thus the role of the ballot is ecological communism, the only form of freedom left, and a preferable one to their banal automated political discourse. Echoes of hegemony permeate the 1NC's fundamental values. The freedom they seek is anti-machinic autonomy, the freedom to consume. Individual control of fate is an imminent politics of the worst kind. Consider the ethics that their Schrader for shed evidence about political equality frames the 1AC autonomy, freedom, and security. Each of these linguistic tropes operate through the register of consumerism. And post-all capital autonomy meant before the Enlightenment the control of one's own body without reprisal by power. Now it's extended to land and to choke. The controls of objects made those an extension of the body, and thus one's under control. Freedom is no longer a freedom of choice, but a freedom to choose within marketable alternatives. You cannot plant a vegetable garden in your front lawn legally. You must go to the grocery store, which requires money, which requires a job just to eat a vegetable. Security, Europeans got it from the state. Now the state murders us for our aesthetic imperfections in its eyes. These values rely on tropes of ancient white male thinking to register good politics in your ears, but now they are the boundary stones of violent hegemony we call globalized capitalism. Now the affirmative does not resolve any of their racism arguments. I'll do the link debate here. First is sustainable development. The affirmative's attack on the fracking industry relies on a belief that the markets of neoliberalism can be simply adjusted in order to create modes of temporary security, which creates resilient subjects. They teach people to accept the imperative not to resist or secure themselves from the inevitable interior violence of neoliberalism, and instead adapt via small government reforms which forecloses our political imaginary and allows neoliberalism to continue. This results in resentment because they only act to live longer instead of being free, and turns the case because it makes structural violence and emissions inevitable. That's where Evans and Reed 14 evidence. Now second is techno-optimism. The affirmative positioning as the able to resolve the climate crisis absent a change in consumption patterns results in mass violence against the dispossessed. Quick fix solutions should shift the problem around. Wind and solar powers unbridled expansion requires the mining of exotic materials in horrible conditions by the poor, and waste disposal on vulnerable communities results in worse working conditions for workers around the globe and turns the Africa's pollutants and waste continue to be dumped on poor communities. That's our Brian and Tully 6 and Holefield evidence from the 1NC. Now third is consumer costs. Their transition to green capitalism imposes the cost of adaptation onto the working class through rising energy costs and labor, like installing insulation homes. They preserve their profit motive that allows for labor in the first place because they don't, but in the burning of natural gas, they just make it harder to get it out of the ground. The same modes of research and development that allow for the solvency of their advantage operate at the same level the means of production, aka energy. That's their often 12 evidence from the 1NC. Now they are not a form of ecological communism. I'll do the alternative here, and it should be pretty clear what the difference is. Our Sultana evidence evokes the question that your ballot should answer: how to create a politics of difference, how to be differently political. Such a politics involves disengaging from systems founded on total adhesion and transcendent jurisdictional givens. In other words, to break up the sameness found within the app and release its true potentiality. An old fool told us we must accept this diversity, love it on its own terms, and communicate with us. Our evidence concludes that absent this embrace of difference, we will see more of the violence that comes from unity and sameness. Now they'll win that the nature of the status quo is unacceptable, but we have rhetoricized that too. The status quo is merely a continuous line of desiring flows that wave their way throughout society. It is not static. There's not one picture that the affirmative can identify. Rather, it is the free-floating machinic operation. Our argument is that reality is no longer one and indivisible. It is marked by lines of possibility that human practices can catch and fly. Ultimately, then we would advocate the status quo, not the one which the affirmative produces, but instead one which is a world of radical difference and free-flowing of desires, revolutionary toppling of any established order, which is why which is also why we meet their framework arguments. Now I will answer the permutation because I think that's what this argument is. First is permutation is either severance or intrinsic. They shift out of the 1AC, reject it because it makes the app a moving target, destroying clash and productive discussion. Second is tactical engagement with the state. Doesn't mean they get the permutation. Crafting the resilient subject requires a propagation of neoliberal discourses that foreclose alternative futures through incessant calls to act within an unquestioned endorsement of neoliberal institutions. Third is all the link arguments are reasons why the permutation do not make any sense or are independent disadds to the permutation. Now their prima facie evidence is some neoliberal shenanigans. That was the argument I made on framework about the way that it understood
understands rights or the political as the ability to be able to live the American dream, to be able to get the same amount of money. And if we can't get the same amount of money, their evidence argues that we need to find a way to navigate systems of law, despite the fact that some of us have less money than others, which means some of us can't hire the same lawyers that other people can. That's what their evidence is about, which is a form of neoliberal violence that teaches us to value neoliberal norms like the right to own property and the American dream, which are all really, really bad things and independent reasons to vote negative, because they teach people they can succeed in the world, and when they don't, because they try to invest in these kinds of neoliberal institutions, it triggers our ressentiment impact, because we can never truly exceed in systems that were already set up for us to fail. Now, we are the best political strategy. That was the alternative work that I did above. Now, their Moya evidence is not an advantage to the affirmative. Their top-down plan isn't community engagement. Communities are so bracketed out of politics. Post the 1AC proves that they are not coalitions. They are only uninformed quick fixes. 1ACCX is embarrassing on this question when they cannot explain the way that banning fracking changes the fact, they cannot explain the way that banning fracking could possibly change the fact that communities of color are routinely bracketed out of discussions about what happens in their communities. Things like having to go to jobs, they don't have the ability to show up to community meetings, or the fact that when they confront the government about these things, the government just ignores them, which will be the one and are all the reasons why they're bracketed out of politics and the reasons why these problems happen in the first place, which proves the necessity of endorsing the alternative. Now, the alternative also solves environmental degradation better than the affirmative. It's the only possible way out of capitalism, and the only way to reject their values of freedom and consumption that create the premise of the 1AC and create the impacts that the 1AC has highlighted. Now, the demand arguments will be in the 1 and R. I'm going to talk about the alternative more because I think they're probably just going to go for the alternative doesn't do anything. The alternative is a way to position yourself ethically within structures of neoliberalism. This is a debate round, which means it is only a question of the kinds of people that our political advocacies within debate teach us to be. Our argument is that neoliberalism is irredeemable. Investing in neoliberalism just causes us to shift the violence to other places in the world and causes crisis in other places, which they then will plan to resolve via another quick fix. But our argument is that always creates modes of crisis that enact violence upon the disadvantaged within society. The only way out is an endorsement of the alternative. The alternative is a form of radical possibility where we recognize our agency in systems of neoliberalism, where we recognize that if we deterritorialize our values, if we get rid of all of our value palettes, if we say that things like the right to own property are no longer what freedom is, and that we understand that the right to own property is not in fact freedom, but is a way to alienate us from our labor and fund the bourgeoisie, then that creates the political possibility for us to find ways out of capitalism via the radical forces that exist within society.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. My first question is, what does it mean to deterritorialize our values?
Deterritorialization is just an act of kind of getting rid of our values.
So all
saying
of our
things,
values?
all the values that are neoliberal, we've highlighted things
Which
like
values are those?
rights, justice, things like the American dream, the idea that freedom is the ability to own property, to freely kind of move throughout neoliberal systems. All of those are examples of things we should deterritorialize in order to create new possibilities.
What values would we keep?
I mean, like, that's kind of an odd question. Our argument is just that
I'm just
the values
trying
that
to
the
understand
1AC
your
has
argument.
presented are bad. I mean, values that we should keep is an odd way to phrase it, because our argument is that the
what
status
values
quo
are good?
lacks those values.
Okay, yeah.
Values that are good are things like an equal distribution of resources, and people not having
sounds like the F.
wages that are different than other people's wages for
Sounds
various
like the
capitalist reasons.
What
I don't
else?
think that's the F.
No, what else? So I have equal resources, equal wages, what else?
It's a form of radical communization, right? It's we share.
We
Sharing
share.
is cool.
Okay, just
I
like
think these questions are
radical
all
sharing.
weird. I positioned the
No, I'm
alternative
just-
as
I'm
a
just
way out,
curious.
not kind of a
yeah.
what is the world after the alternative, but that only getting out of this world is the way that we should do politics.
Okay, so then another question is, you say we can't weigh the F against the critique. Then what do we weigh as the F?
The justifications or the advocacy that your affirmative creates.
So just like why the F is okay.
Why the F's political engagement is good and something
Okay.
people should endorse.
So then the alt creates a subject. Is that what the alt does? I'm just a little confused. Like, what does the alt do?
I mean, this just kind of comes back to the argument about deterritorialization. We get rid of our old values in the hopes that
We being the
once
people
we do
or the
that,
government.
well, we think everybody should, but our argument is that in this debate around the judge should vote negative to get rid of their values. that are neoliberal.
But like, how does the ballot
And to
do
reject
that?
the AFT's values that are neoliberal. I mean, what does the ballot do ever? That's kind of a weird question. What's the ballot do for you?
So then you say,
It's a form of endorsing political advocacy. We think
Yeah.
our political advocacy is good.
is fiat useful at all, like educationally?
I mean, our argument is that fiat is not very useful educationally. You can make arguments that say it is, but
Okay.
the 2NC said that fiat is bad. It
no,
creates a
I'm-
kind of
yeah.
disinvestment in politics because we don't have the ability to enact the
What do
things
we
that the
sever out
affirmative
of the
says we
AF
can
lending
enact.
program?
You sever out of things like the shift to renewables that you defended in the 2AC. You sever out of the logic of we should just ban the emissions that fracking creates because we've caved that logic as well. You sever out of your piece of evidence that indicates that we should have some kind of political equality that's grounded in the idea that even though we have wage differences, we somehow have the ability to navigate law equally, right? All of those things are
Okay.
examples of link arguments I've made specific to the AF that the
Okay.
permutation would get rid of.
Okay.
Okay. It's been sent. The order is case.
Round 3, yes.
Yes, that is correct.
It's a lot. So much leg sweat.
I'm cozy. I don't know what you're talking about.
Alright. So that's my mouse.
Oh, it's here. It's underneath the,
Got it. Thanks, friend.
no prob, Bob.
Alright. Yeah. Order just case.
Just case.
Yep.
Alright.
I'm going to make a framing argument at the top. Do not allow the 1AR or the 2AR to endorse just the quote-unquote ethic of the affirmative. When we win any of our shift disads or critique link arguments, this is the reason why the ethic of the affirmative is one that endorses violence. All of their arguments about why scenario planning are battling just as much to the affirmative the way they're articulating them. AKA, they've made the prediction that banning methane emissions means the end of fracking. And then the end of fracking, that prediction that there will be a shift to renewables rather than a shift to overseas markets or a shift to cleaner fracking technology. Also, any kind of politics that endorses not thinking about the consequences of our actions is bad. Is a voting issue and a reason why you should reject the team, because it means that we never have to deal with the accountability and the consequences of the things that we the consequences of things that we endorse. Is the reason why the state can do things like create new naval bases, because we don't know for sure that it will become a polluter, because we don't know for sure that it will become a polluter. Those aren't impacts that we need to that we should weigh against the whole nature of environmental justice. The environment is a shared community. Means that the shifting and offloading of burdens to emissions to other parts of the world just means that the same kinds of violence continue. Their refusal to engage at all with the nuances of how state bureaucracy changes, manipulates, and shifts violence. Shifts violence makes it impossible for the affirmative to solve, because it means we can never hold any of the government agencies accountable. Now, this is their only answer to the shift is that argument that I have about that I have made about the shift of fracking technologies to other countries. Extend our Bessie Evans from the 1AC, our Navarro and Bessie Evans from the 1AC that indicates this is happening now because fracking companies are already buying up buying up land in the global south that they think will be productive and good sites for fracking use and fracking technology. Now the app causes for growth of foreign industry. In the short term, the plant skyrockets industrial production costs in sectors like agriculture, mining, steel, and energy. That causes foreign competitors to gain comparative advantages and increase their emissions to 4,000 of increased demand for cheaper imported goods. It also means an increase in domestic energy consumption. In the long term, the cost of emissions restrictions force domestic industry to relocate themselves to other countries like Vietnam, Mexico, and China without emissions restrictions, which fundamentally circumvents the app's emissions cap and results in no net decrease of GHG emissions. Now they've made the assertion that the cost to other countries is higher than the reward. The cost has already been had in the status quo. That's my argument. How they've already bought the territory. There's also no warrant to any of the predictions that they leverage here. And The impact outweighs in turns the case. First, it guarantees the continuing evolution of violence as GHGs are still emitted into the atmosphere. And second, carbon leakage still creates foreign zones of toxicity where communities of the global south bear the brunt of externalized carbon emissions. Toxic co-emissions, deforestation, industrial byproducts from relocated industry, uproot indigenous life world with little to no oversight or regulation. You should prioritize subterranean structures of injustice. That was in the 2 and C anti-turns case. Emission reshuffling means no net reduction in domestic emissions. I've explained that a bunch of times already, and they make it worse. Carbon leakage means that a net increase in CO2 emissions happens. The disad is linear. The disad is linear. Domestic. The two arguments I've explained above of the offloading of fracking to other countries with lower regulations means that there's actually an increase in emissions that happens. There are other arguments about renewables. First of all, super vague, and also don't solve the criticism of the AF. None of these arguments link to their prediction arguments. Wind turbines require massive neodymium mining that externalizes massive pollution and toxic exposure to impoverished rural communities. Perry and Douglas Love in the process to stack neodymium natives. This is the deadly set of companies profiting from war. When would you prefer to know nothing about its healing? A lake is dumping ground for 7 million tons of mined rare earth after it's been doused in acid and chemicals to turn mountain. Anything we plant to just with their villagers, teeth begin to fall out and they suffer from severe skin respiratory disease, cancer, radioactive sulfur radiation toxicity has been kept secret only with alternative energies, neodymium, and come to progress. There's not one step of the mining process, now disaster for the environment. Wars are being extracted by pumping acid and process and using more acid and chemicals. They are dumped into healing lakes that are poorly maintained. Large amounts of toxic acid metals and chemicals are emitted to the air that leak into water. Villagers rely on this for irrigation and drinking water. And solar causes e-waste now. And 10, their solar disposal must be carefully handled to avoid contamination. 2/3 of states have no laws requiring recycling. These currently exports to 80% of this e-waste to countries that lack infrastructure to manage. I don't think that enough people are talking about recycling. Another executive familiar with the solar industry. The issue of solar molecules is the big jewel one that nobody thought a lot about yet. And e-waste causes starvation, death, and inequality. Templeton and 9, exporting toxic e-waste is unfair. Developing countries are forced to pay the cost in exchange for desperately needed jobs. Disproportionately burdens the poor. E-waste compromises economic potential, making it difficult to overcome development of toxic waste contaminates the soil, groundwater, and food, which is harmful substance farms, agrarian communities, opportunity costs of resources, redirected from education or infrastructure building are significant. High percentages of children die before the age of 5. This also answers their argument. This also answers the card, the Dawson piece of evidence they read about how we can create better progressive agendas. The two cards are an impact turn to progressive agendas, which that piece of evidence defines as sustainable energy extraction, aka things like renewables that I've already criticized above. Don't let the 1AR pivot out of the link to things like solar and air-based wind technology, because these are the examples given in cross-examination of the 1AC. We have to spend way too much time in cross-links already figuring out whether or not renewables is something they'll defend, and defend and crossing the 2AC seem to pretty definitively indicate that they would. Also, the state provides limited protection. Their inability to conceive of politics outside of the state and international politics is the reason why violence like what I've described above, the offshoring of emissions burden to other countries, can happen in the first place, which is the reason why this is an ethical approach that should be rejected. You looked like you had a thing you wanted to say to me, Emma.
Oh, you're good.
Alright. So, where was I? Yeah, our Howard and Kyra evidence also indicates that they have the technology to do things like fracking, to do zero emissions fracking. They say that this is that this author is a fracking hack. It cites things like the GAO, aka governmental agencies and independent environmental review managers, which are the exact same people who you are investing in and trusting to enforce the mandate of the affirmative, and who you are getting your same scientific data from. So if this argument is true, it means that the greenwash vision of the affirmative is impossible. Also, the evidence is citing reviews that say this technology exists. It also does mention that their regulations would push it into being profitable, because it's not profitable in the status quo. The affirmative creates the incentive necessary for emissions-free fracking technology to exist.
All right. We have 501.
Yep.
Give me 1 sec. I'll finish this case debate real quick.
Alright, start product. We have 257.
Yep.
Lauren, if you understand.
No one in our hat?
It's hot in here. This hat is very thick. Alright, case, then the K. I'm going to start on the overview, where there were some impacts extended.
When you get to the K.
Yes, when I get to the K.
Gotcha.
And then I'm going to hit that K proper.
Yep.
Everyone ready? We're not going for the predictions argument. You can reject the argument, not the team here. We will only defend okay, listen. Ethics. That's important. They extended our investigative evidence. However, we say that it is expensive to go overseas because we have to build an entirely new infrastructure that they may say they already have this land built. However, they are actually expanding that in the Texas region right now. This means that there's already infrastructure there. That means when they export, that'll be expensive. There's no impact framing here. Extended specific to the affirmative. Now, we do not try to solve the environment or climate change. We are about people now. You mean, which means you need to privilege these things. And even if you win, that their consequentialist framing is good. We will agree that pragmatism is good. But the most pragmatic thing is to focus on people that are existing right now. There is no risk of offseas shifting because there's no risk of overseas shifting because there's no specific evidence that's specific enough to our plan. There's no evidence that says that once we ban 100% of greenhouse gas emissions that they will shift overseas, and even if they win a substantial risk of this, we will still win because the case outweighs the impacts of the case. There's no specific evidence about how the people overseas will be uniquely affected. However, we have an obligation to change the lives of the people that are being affected right now. Now, we will also argue that there's 100% risk of renewable shift. I will answer this. Now, they say that I will defend this to my dying breath. Now, they say that they do not extend their coal impact, which means that we will get 100% risk of the renewable shift. Now, I'll answer their renewable strands here. They say the wind is bad. However, this piece of evidence is unique to China. The technology in the U.S. is uniquely better, and it also is better disposing of e-waste. And it's also, even if they win a risk that their wind turbines are bad, this is better than fracking. We will make that comparative claim. And they say solar is bad and e-waste. However, the very first piece of evidence that said that disposal is tough but possible. It says that it also said that it's only bad when we export it to other countries. Now, there is no risk of export under the affirmative. Now, there's also because we will encourage e-waste recycling, which is the affirmative. Now, the fracking hack argument is Kyoto. Listen. This piece of evidence was published in 2011. Kyoto Protocol happened in 2013. This implemented a lot of regulations on fracking and penalized them pretty severely for emitting greenhouse gas emissions. There was no implementation of carbon neutral or greenhouse gas neutral technology, which probably indicates that it doesn't exist. Also, the piece of evidence is still from a fracking hack, and it also talks about things that only happen in theory. Overview to the K. The 2AC may have been really spotty here, but there's a couple things in the 2AC that they didn't wrestle with that I will go for here. The horizontal amount of impact we do not link to. We do not ask people to survive. We actually ask people to we actually do not ask anything from people. We ask things from the government, which means that we fundamentally change the way these things happen. The second one is we solve the graves of the POC by actually caring about the real lives of the POC. That she was right that I'm going for the all doesn't do anything for actual real people. Now, they say coal out the case debate answers this. Now, even if they do win risk of coal out, ethics are good. Now, on the line by line, I'll extend our framework here. The role of the ballot is to compare political strategies. Now, their answer to political strategies is eco-communism, but that is not a role of the ballot. It is not the only type of freedom left. That is not the type of freedom left. We have really specific ethics here that they cannot. We're not going for plan focus. That's not even the right page. We're not going for plan focus, we're going for 1AC focus, which answers back a lot of their often terror framing. We also contend that fiat is good because it creates a positive imaginary. We can imagine futures that are actually good for people, and this actually leads to practical solutions. That is our pragmatism evidence. It is also unfair because they hold us, they eliminate 9 minutes of offense. It's unfair. You hold us to 100% of the affirmative. Now, even if they win a risk that they should not weigh fiat, you also will go for, listen. What was I saying? Even if they win a risk that you do not weigh fiat, we will be able to weigh our ethics against theirs. No, they do not name their ethics. That is the unique difference between the affirmative and the negative. They have not been able to name what the future looks like after the alternative, and they say that is not important, and it's all about deterritorializing. However, deterritorialization is not possible for people who are living in a place where their identity categories are conscripted and described and conscripted by the world that they live in, by fracking elites, and by the way the land is distributed. Now, our ethics is uniquely key. That our ethics is uniquely good. It's prima facie political equality that says that resources are equally distributed, and also is the unique key to all future ethics. That is our evidence that is way better than their evidence, which justifies the permutation to both, because we are the only people who actually have an ethical vision. I'll enter the link debate here. What were the links? The first one is structural development. However, we are the best political imaginary. We are the best political imaginary for the ethics reason that I outlined above. Now, they say techno-optimism. However, we do not try to solve the climate with technology. They say consumer costs. However, they have outweighs consumer costs because of the people actually physically dying. Now, the arguments by Rosanamon are outweighed by the case now, and the renewables thing. Now, I will extend the permutation to both here. It is not severance, because there's no specific thing that we're severing out of. The thing that we are actually defending the most is our ethics that they say we link the most, and that's also not intrinsic, because there's no articulation of why that is true. Now, their biggest answer to our ethics is that it's all neoliberalism. It says that things about autonomy and freedom. However, the autonomy and freedom is things that the negative also talks about, which means that either it puts them in a double mind. Either they link to their own criticism by advocating for a very vague ethics that they do not actually know the definition of, or B, the permutation resolves this because it provides the best vision for an ethical future. There is no ethics without prima facie distributive justice. This is the unique piece of evidence here. Now, this is not about the right to own property. It's the right to actually have breathable air. This is the piece of evidence that was read at the very bottom of the fracking convention. I think we tried to change the order of the 1AC, but that means that we must hold the governments responsible. I'll extend the Dawson evidence here, which says that we're working from that. We are not a top-down solution. We are a bottom-up solution, working with community building. We are the actual end point of what those communities are asking for, which means that we are the only internal link to ethics in this round.
We have 10 minutes.
Yep.
A fun thing.
I'm gonna go get some water. Right there.
I'll say dumpers.
Cannot be a thing that you just the extension of level 1. What level?
Yeah, no, it's more the choosing point part, not the.
You want to choose together?
Yeah. Choose together.
Alright. So, this one. This one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is life. Yeah. So, yeah. And name it.
Yeah, I agree.
So that one?
Yeah.
Cool.
You should.
Okay. I'll try my best. We'll see. I gotta do some other stuff. There's a lot of things happening. Debate's hard. Okay.
And then this is where you explain why that is. They're probably going for Zenkin. Which you say? Sorry.
Case and then resilience.
Swell.
I forgot which color was. Oh.
You all good?
Sorry, I thought you were still setting up the stand, but I was watching.
Extended riparian Douglas Adams wind turbines require massive neodymium mining that externalizes massive pollution, toxic exposure to impoverished rural community. This turns the app because A, it means that massive air pollution continues, and since the atmosphere is global, wanting to see impacts continue, aka the communities they say come first will suffer, and subpoint B is it cheats on indigenous people because it's the buying out of their land and shitting on all of their communities. We've also conceded the one in our framing that we need to focus on global south because their arguments about lives being destroyed now is just a colonial attempt to privilege the lives of the global north over those in the south. These are the voices and the consequences traditionally marginalized in state-based discussion, which is a reason why you should privilege them. Also a diss to their state-focused argument. Now, the only one of your argument is that this card is about China. Yes, because they're the ones who tested wind power, and also it doesn't matter if it's set in China because it's about the process of building the wind turbine. Where else do you get the plastic and metal and the chemicals if not through the creation of violent mining operations and resource extraction? The 1AR has also conceded the elephant renewables like wind, which should hold the 2AR to an extent, or Bessie Evans as well. Fracking companies have already bought land in the south to move their operation, which means all of their arguments about how it's too extensive have already been dealt with and demonstrated they don't make any sense because fracking companies have already decided for themselves that it's not too expensive. They also have no evidence that supports this cost-effective claims, which proves the circumvention argument that the furnace impacts are all inevitable, and we have an external impact which massively outweighs, which is our neodymium mining impact. Now go to the criticism. We have impact turned the plan and their model of reform. First is our reform. Our case-specific shift argument outweighs the affirmative. The reason why you should endorse the alternative. But second, even if we don't win that specific shift argument, the thesis of our criticism is that neoliberalism responds to the death of old markets with the creation of new markets. We don't need to win that specific claim. Only that green capitalism creates a mindset where we accept the inevitability of crisis and just adapt to it, which leads to nihilism and allows mass global violence to continue. Extend our sustainable development link from the 2 and C. The affirmative is a temporary adaptation to the interior violence of neoliberalism, which accepts the inevitability of crisis. They see the mass deaths in low-income communities and say, wow, the government actors that also just happen to pass hella oil bills all day should do something about that. We see mass death in low-income communities and say, wow, maybe we should think about why all those deaths happen in the first place. Now the logic of governmental quick fixes, aka adaptation, causes two impacts. Subpoint A is resentment. We come to nihilistically accept the world's current political coordinates in favor of a mere survivalism, which evacuates meaning from life. That's our Evans and Reed evidence. Now this outweighs the affirmative because we may not be able to change the world or pass policies, but we can at least live life in a way that is cool instead of just running from death all day. Now subpoint B is an internal link turns the app because it makes structural violence inevitable, and neoliberalism takes at its premise the creation of new markets no matter what violence they come with, which makes the app a structural impossibility. These are also both answers to the permutation. The resilient subject is constructed at the level of discourse, which means the discursive implications, the discursive choices behind the 1AC are incredibly important. The thesis of our alternative argument is that the way neoliberalism operates is by infiltrating our value system and territorializing it in a way that teaches us to value private property, to value the right discourse at their piece of political advocacy. Evidence is about to value the ability to live the American dream. All of these things are the way that neoliberalism creates itself and perpetuates itself in every life, which means that you have to hold them to every single one of those things. Anything else is severance and is a voter for fairness in education because it undermines any ability to clash with the 1AC, because we base all of our 1AC offense off of, we base our 1AC strategy off of 1AC choices. Now the alternative is the only political option or way to avoid the re-territorialization of neoliberalism, which means that even if they win a decide to the alternative, you still have to vote negative because only the alternative has even a chance of resolving either team's impacts. Now in the alternative, you should be differently political. We need to de-territorialize ourselves from neoliberal values like the rights discourse advocated by their political equity evidence or their infatuation with renewables. Everyone and everything is just a force in the world, and the more of us that refuse to be forces of neoliberalism, the better the world is. The affirmative attempts to create a static flow of neoliberal force that goes goes in one direction. Instead, you should embrace the potentiality and a radical line of flight away from neoliberal values. This creates a condition or possibility for freedom. We do not know what a new world looks like because our realities are so saturated by violence. It is only a question of how we get out of this world. That is our piece of Saldana evidence. Now, they do not do anything to help real people extend our framework interpretation. You should evaluate the one you see in terms of knowledge production. One is imagining pragmatic futures is bad. It leads to a disinvested advocacy where we become complacent with the world as is because we're happy with just pretending that we solve the world's problems in debate rounds, which is a conceited passivity argument from the 2NC and a reason why you can vote negative on presumption because their model of education gets us backwards in the world. Now, second is the ideology of policy making is bad. It's due with notions of neoliberal hegemony and dogmatism. That's our Saldana evidence. We don't moot the 1AC. In fact, they do. They reduce 8 minutes to a 1-sentence advocacy, which leads to irresponsible advocacy where we don't defend our assumptions, which all of my link arguments indicate are incredibly important. Now, eco-communism is all we have. That was the overview. Our ethics is one of deterritorialization, which is all we as individuals can do. The question of the alternative is us as individuals within debate rounds and what saying arguments in debate rounds means. Our argument is that saying things in debate rounds we should position ourselves in ethical ways because this debate round doesn't provide a way for us to actualize our plans or actually pass government reforms, but what it does create is the possibility for us to create new political options or new lines of flights away from the current political sphere. Now, the permutation is severance out of all their neoliberal discourse. I have already done that work at the top, but the arguments that I made on the case are independent reasons why, even if you endorse the plan text, even if you decide that your conclusion on frameworks that you should endorse the plan text, there is a massive disadd to the plan text which outweighs and turns the entirety of the 1AC and proves that the permutation does not make any sense because it still includes the 1AC, which includes things like neodymium mining that cause massive violence against populations all over the world.
Alright, we have 3 minutes.
Yep.
So, the most important thing China, oh my god. Did Shroud show up with this?
Yeah. It's on camera, probably.
What the fuck?
Does that mean that if I looked at
Hold
the
on,
live stream
y'all.
video?
Wait,
Can you please? Oh, sorry.
Okay. So, China probably gets from different places in the world. US technology is cleaner, and also all of their arguments for wind turbines say that it's difficult but possible to dismantle
Am I right?
No, but.
You have to have faith in me.
What?
You have to have faith in me.
Okay.
Order.
Okay, order case K. Starting with an overview of how to frame the round. Okay, y'all look ready. Is everyone ready? Okay. Even if we're going to risk that the athletes, we only provide an ethical version that is cohesive and necessary in name, which is prima facie political equality. It represents a merger between environmental justice and distributive justice, upon which all other ethics are founded. This is conceded coming out of the 1AC. This negs ethical understanding is incoherent without the app because they fail to answer what their ethics are and that researchers distribute equally, which is the app. Even if we want a 1% risk that the app ethics are good for indigenous people in the face of absolute nothing of the K, you vote app. And even if you don't weigh the plan, you vote the app because of our ethic. Let's go to the ethic of the app. Prima facie political equality is a deal meaning that all ethical claims are coherent is the key to distributive justice. This is Schrader and Freschetti evidence 2006. We do not blanket apply our ethic. A quote in our evidence talks about how we apply PPFE case by case, which means in the case of fracking, we would apply it. And even if our ethics smell like liberalism, they are necessary and sufficient to mitigate the harms of liberalism. There's 4 independent reasons why. First is the maldistribution of resources. We stop from people from being able to take their land in order to allocate it, in order to build like money for fracking companies to fill the pockets of indigenous leaders. The second is political engagement equality. We allow for indigenous movements and also people that live in those communities to have any kind of engagement or equality about what land they're distributed and what air they are allowed to breathe. Third is a right to protect. Remember, the act protects a right to a livable environment. This is gonna be really big on the severance debate, that the only right that we protect is a right to a livable environment where people can breathe clean air and drink water that is not being polluted. And fourth is a freedom to exist without poison on this choking air water. So frame all of the benefits of the act in
just
terms of
freedom
a
to exist,
livable
but also like freedom to act in an autonomous way.
Yes, freedom to act in an autonomous way, both in their literal lives and also their political lives, because right now they're being constrained by the types of resources that are available and also the way the land is distributed from being able to do so. So, equality is defensible. If you believe that we should fight for equality, this means either the K of ethics links to itself, or you vote out from presumption, or there's no link and you vote for the F from the perm. And they concede pragmatism means that you are extremely suspicious that they're all within...
They concede what?
Pragmatism. Means that you are extremely suspicious that they're all within an actual vision about what happens. Their line of flight sounds a lot like a quick fix, without a vision about what actually happens afterward. Only affirmative has a good vision. Vote on our ethic on the case arguments first. If the case is going to be outweighed because we're going to solve people who directly have the harms of pollution, also the political harms of not being able to control where they live and what air they breathe in the second, and also all these arguments were completely dropped by the negative about the rape that happens and the sex trafficking because of movements about fracking. If that's clearly an important issue, I would argue that outweighs more than Rosantamon, because if you would hate your life more if you had to live with being raped and also sex trafficking in that kind of environment. And our kind of suffering outweighs because look to our impact frame, how current political leaders who have a vested interest in working with fracking companies ignore local community and indigenous movements because of these kinds of issues about what about China, what about plastic. They use this because they want the fracking industries to happen. So that is the rhetoric and the discourse that they use is, let's not try talking about this issue that is so probable to us economically to stop for these people. So thus you're going to be outweighing on our argument anyway, because their discourse just this replication will be standing in the status quo. And China already probably gets plastic from different places in the USA. The US check is cleaner, and all the argument about wins says it's difficult but possible to dispose of it safely. And the global south framing, this is when everyone in the global north is living it up, but we all live in this sort of thing about how we're having right now. And cross-political arguments how the neg is just a distraction from the issue of dealing with indigenous people, and they also don't solve the global south, and Fiat only gives us the power to change the USA. Let's go to the K. They didn't extend the links did a very good job in the app. Like they did a really bad job of link extension, and we don't sever in the app. We defend 100% justification of the app, which is one, our ethics, and to a right to a livable environment. Claim all of our impacts to that, and also Resentiment. They do terrible weighing in the 2-1 about how Resentiment compares to people literally dying in the status quo and having to deal with sex trafficking and rape, which is happening right now in the app world, and that their alternative is not the only political option. Remember, Crosswell, that sounds just like a quick fix. That our idea is going to happen. Remember, there's no explanation. This comes it's too little, too late coming. And the 2-1 about how their alternative is going to solve the issues of the app. They never explained how their alternative is a way to solve for air pollution, for water pollution, and for any kind of sex trafficking, but also for racial distribution, for land permits. The K doesn't solve anything, which means that at best, you're either going to be voting off on a presumption because our ethic is good, because we believe that people should have come to equality, which is the prima facie ethics coming out of the 1AC, or you're going to be voting off of the perm because like the perm is the best way to do so. Remember, our Moya argument talks about how we have coalitions otherwise just doing the alt alone.
Alright, say why we get to weigh the AF.
And we get to weigh the AF because first of all, there are all these are about framework how this is going to sever 9 minutes of 1AC offense, and that's going to be unfair. Also, it makes my 2AR really, really difficult if we're not allowed to weigh the app, because then we have to. I don't even know what we could weigh because
the only thing left to like even if they win a risk that we don't weigh the F, we still win on our ethic.
Oh yes. Okay, even if we can't weigh like the physical plans of the F, we can still weigh the ethic of the F, which is our political solution, which is the way that we value people, and a prima facie political ethic, which is the way we value equality. So that's still going to be an automatic reason to win, which is why we need the burden of proof.
And our framework doesn't sever our justifications. We say our justifications are why we win.
Yes, we would. Framework does not sever justification. Justification for the 1EC is why we win, believe in this prima facie political ethic, which is a combination of distributive justice and environmental justice, more specifically on the arguments. Once again, if we're going to be like comparing like this Resentiment impact and cross-play arguments about rape and also about people literally dying in the status quo, the second argument is about, like they say, discourse values the system, but the discourse that we say is we should value people to a clean environment, have a livable environment, that we should use the state pragmatically in order to actualize. Remember, this is huge impact on the ground. The 1AC is the end goal of all of these local coalitions of these indigenous movements of what they want to see have happen. People have been protesting since like 2013 and 2014 more recently. Those are the most recent cases of wanting to ban fracking. The 1AC, in the past. I know this is the most recent. But anyway, and so the AF is just the end goal, the realization of these movements, which means that if you vote negative, you're going to say that we should ignore what these indigenous people have been protesting to want to have happen, which I would argue would be like violence against their voices, because the discourse of our 1AC is not bad. Our discourse says we should listen to people's voices because of their environment, how they should be effective. That is really good. Also, we're not severing on anything. Remember that they say like their alt, remember the alt does not solve the F. We have no idea of what an envision of this better world is, and that the 1AC knowledge production is good because it says, one, that we should listen to voices of indigenous communities, and second of all, that we should value this kind of prima facie ethic that allows for everything, but we're still going to be outweighing the AF because the AF talks about like real lives and people dying, but and they have no impacts to Resentiment that is so vague and they have no way to compare it.
I don't want to shake Al's hands because I'm like really sick, but
okay, there we go. I'm Bren and
Okay.
So I went through last week. I found Stroud's 2 spots to look in the service.
Look at my feet.
do you have a bino? Nice.
Would be nice if it was before an egg round.
I can crap.
Yeah, I gotta go make up arguments against Gonzaga.
Oh my god, have fun. They're like that weird Senia Cap stuff, right?
Hmm?
They're like weird Senia Cap.
They stuff about the tie.